Language is powerful. It's how we communicate with loved ones and give meaning to the world around us. If I were to pull out a flip-flop, or chancla as it's known in Spanish, you'd probably associate that with a day at the beach or walking. But that might not have the same meaning to, let's say, a Hispanic kid who sees the chancla and goes running for his life to avoid a beating. Language is ubiquitous. You probably have no recollection of ever learning it. It's just always been there. Some people learn and master one language within their lifetime, while others learn two or more. Early on, my parents prioritized language by exposing me to both Spanish and English from the day I was born, and at the tender age of 3, they learned Mandarin for fun. This led to some adorable toddler moments, like the period where I would speak English with a Chinese accent, or when I would proudly declare, "Yo speako español muy bien." And this just goes to show how immersed I was into other cultures from the get-go. This then sets the stage for my Mandarin learning in elementary and middle school, where I attended a Mandarin immersion school for 9 years. Language has always provided me with a platform to wholly communicate with others, whether that's with family, who I'd be entirely cut off from if I didn't speak Spanish, or with people in other countries. It's given me opportunities to travel, broaden my worldview, and my life would be completely different without the knowledge I've gained from language. However, the world that has enriched my upbringing is changing before my eyes. A recent study done in 2023 by the Modern Language Association states how total college and university enrollments in languages other than English dropped by 16.6% between the fall of 2016 and the fall of 2021. There's been a national trend across universities to cut language programs, as more students are pursuing careers in the sciences rather than linguistic education. This was shocking to me, as I have always been in an environment where language was held in the highest regard. To see that numerous institutions are not prioritizing language motivated me to speak up by sharing experiences that have enriched my life, as well as the importance of multilingualism. There are many cognitive benefits to being bilingual, many of which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. Being bilingual or multilingual can help with problem-solving skills, strengthen one's ability to focus, and can even stave off dementia by improving memory. All of these are fascinating and great examples of how language can affect the brain, but I like to focus on another example, creativity. We tend to throw this word around a lot without quite understanding the extent of what it means. There are two main elements of creativity: convergent and divergent thinking. Convergent thinking refers to the way of thinking in which one can process several pieces of information and come to one final solution or answer. So if I were to give you an algebra problem, you'd use your convergent thinking skills to analyze that information and come to one answer. This applies to more complex problems as well. For example, analyzing multitudes of data with different variables to come to one final conclusion. This is also known as cognitive inhibition. When you speak multiple languages and are in an environment where multiple are spoken, you have to constantly be processing and tuning out different kinds of information while still remaining focused on the task at hand. Think of translating. Many studies have shown how bilinguals are actually better at this ability than their monolingual counterparts. One study done in 2022 and published in the National Library of Medicine states how their research shows that bilingual learning can actually enhance convergent thinking through cognitive inhibition. Another element of creativity is divergent thinking, which is the process of exploring multiple ideas from one starting point. The most common example of this is brainstorming. This thinking practice also requires one to switch between two or more concepts simultaneously, something which I'm sure all multilinguals have experienced. I know I have. This is also known as cognitive flexibility, and I like to think of it in terms of the ability to connect dots between two or more ideas and switch between those thoughts. One test known to determine cognitive flexibility has participants press a different key depending on a given number's magnitude, color, and if it's even or odd. Many studies have shown how bilinguals actually perform more successfully in this task than monolinguals because of how they need to implement this skill on a daily basis. Since both convergent and divergent thinking practices are elements of creativity and both enhance cognitive inhibition and flexibility, we can come to the conclusion that innovation generally comes easier to multilinguals than monolinguals. Being able to see how creativity and innovation adds to the cognitive benefits of multilingualism is essential but only one part of understanding the overall importance of language. For example, language also broadens your thinking towards the histories, traditions, and customs of other cultures, or in other words, cultural literacy. My Mandarin learning journey has been lifelong. I started in preschool, playing games and singing songs, but that journey really began to evolve when I was given opportunities to travel to China in different capacities. Global travel has led me to learn about the histories of the places I visited, connect with local populations, and engage in cultural activities. One of the most impactful experiences I've had when traveling was on a school trip to the Yellow Mountains in China, where we experienced the art of tea. In China, as in many other countries, tea is a very important part of daily life, and has been for thousands of years. As someone who grew up drinking mass-produced Lipton tea, I had never learned about the traditions associated with tea making in China, and it wasn't until I immersed myself in the culture that I was able to learn this. Since then, my journey has continued to flourish, and a few months ago, I embarked on easily one of the most unusual experiences I've had with language learning. I was invited to represent the US in the Chinese Bridge competition in China, where over 100 students from different countries came together to participate in a 2-week-long Chinese language and culture competition. We visited 3 different cities in China and essentially acted as student ambassadors of our own countries. I wrote speeches, performed, advanced, lost. It was fun. But potentially one of the times I learned the most was not from the competition itself, but rather when I interacted with event organizers and was interviewed by the local media. Speaking Mandarin provided me with more perspective when I took in the stories and histories of the places I visited, rather than visiting a place I had no connection to. These experiences really just showed me how much language can affect cultural literacy. So if language learning and multilingualism have all these benefits and can positively impact personal growth, then why is language acquisition among university students actively declining? Many argue that with the developments in new technologies and with the help of AI, this could completely eliminate the need to learn a language, as we perceive language as just a new way to say things, not a new way to view the world. So this begs the question, if in 15 to 20 years, AI will be able to translate every aspect of speech, why is language learning so important anyway? Language provides us with a platform to express ourselves in so many unique ways, and it gives us opportunities to connect with others in deep, meaningful ways. While we try to limit how much we interact with others, in a time when the overuse of technology is already making it increasingly difficult to form these meaningful connections in the first place. Have you ever tried to translate something from Google Translate between 2 languages you speak? Why does the translation never seem quite right? Maybe it's too literal or just a little off. I can never seem to get a good translation from Google Translate, and maybe that's because it's missing the authenticity, the stories behind what I'm saying. I recently spoke with some American students attending university in China, and they all expressed interest in learning Chinese and wished they had learned it sooner. Even these students felt a strong desire, a hunger even, to engage in Chinese culture by learning the language. So if AI were to take the place of language, would communicating be easier? In theory, yes. But we would only gain a shallow understanding of those we're working with, and never a deeper understanding if we don't take the time to learn about the cultures and languages we're interacting with. Language provides us with a whole new perspective and understanding of the world around us. This concept and this idea that language gives us a new perspective was actually developed in 1929 into a concept called linguistic relativity. At a very high level, it suggests that the languages that we speak can actually influence the way we see the world because of the structure and vocabulary of the language. Let's do a little experiment. I want everyone to think of a table. Now, would you say this table is masculine or feminine? Some of you may be very confused by this question. Like, how do you assign gender to an inanimate object? That's totally fine. It just probably means that you're an English speaker or speak a language that does not assign gender to objects like this. However, a handful of you may have instantly thought of a table as being feminine. Why is this? Most likely because you speak Spanish, French, or another language that genders objects. I tried this with a friend of mine who's recently learning Spanish, and she was blown away at the fact that she had just assigned gender to a table. This may not seem very important, but has broader implications as well. If you think about it, language provides us the lens to view the world around us. And being able to understand that about someone is the highest level of connection you can form with them. Although this idea of linguistic relativity has been debated among researchers, it demonstrates the intriguing ways in which language can influence our perceptions and interpretations of the world around us. And that's the power of multilingualism. It's what Google Translate can't teach us about language, but rather something we need to experience on our own. And I find that fascinating. With all these benefits to multilingualism, improved brain function, cultural literacy, worldview, why is language acquisition so especially important for young people in this day and age? Deciding what you want to pursue in life is one of the biggest questions we as young people tend to contemplate well into our 20s. Being able to understand the cultures of those around us is essential, regardless of what job we choose, because it gives us the framework in order to understanding the cultures and languages we work with. Teachers often have to communicate with ESL students. Lawyers need to effectively understand the cultural backgrounds of their clients in order to do their job. Language is about maximizing what we can bring to the table, no matter what career we choose. We need to teach the next generation of doctors, teachers, lawyers, CEOs, and law enforcement that language learning is key to understanding those we're working with. With the world becoming more and more connected, it is the responsibility of our generation to lead the way in creating a less exclusionary society. Language gives us the ability to mutually understand each other, no matter our cultural background, and actively making the decision to limit that human connection seems counterproductive, especially during a time where, as a society, we continuously divide one another. Have you ever met someone who regretted learning another language? Probably not. What about someone who regretted not learning another language? You never know where your life is going to take you, where you'll end up in the world, or who you'll meet to interact with. So why not start preparing now? Thank you.